What would United do without him, eh? Amad Diallo with a hat-trick to bail out Manchester United against Southampton. The bottom club in the Premier League turned up to Old Trafford and very, very nearly ended up turning over United. You could argue that they even deserved to win that game, but Amad Diallo turns up with a hat-trick within about 12 minutes to spare United's blushes and to have one of the best moments and best nights in his young career so far. He's had plenty of them already. Obviously, the Liverpool game, the Man City game as well. But a hat-trick for Amad Diallo is a big deal for him, and it just solidifies his growing status within this team. He's now an automatic starter. Ruben Amorim, after the game, saying already, we need him to eat well, we need him to sleep, we need him to rest because we need him for Brighton on Sunday. And they very much do, because United are still very much a work in progress. Let's just say that. This is the promised land. A Manchester United podcast from me, Scott Saunders, talking all things Manchester United, reacting to the 3-1 win over Southampton and looking ahead briefly to the Brighton game, which is next on Sunday in the Premier League. It was a very difficult game for United last night. I think the system that Ruben Amorim is trying to build and work is going to require patience, time, progress, training, lots of different things, and probably some interchanges of personnel as well. But we knew that already. And after the FA Cup progress against Arsenal and after the draw with Liverpool, where there were two really good performances from United, we were backed, reverting to type in a sense, until Amad stepped up and did what he does best. I'll be talking about the problems that we saw in United's performance last night. I'll be reflecting on the bright spots, because this is obviously never too high, never too low. And I was dreading doing this podcast this morning, talking about or trying to be never too low just after Man United had lost at home to Southampton, because that's the way it was going to look. Southampton turned up to United for 80 odd minutes, really 60 minutes, I think, until they dropped off energy-wise. They absolutely ripped United to shreds at times. They ran through the middle. Lenny Yoro had a difficult night, let's to say the least. And I was dreading this. You know, the never too high, never too low vibe. How can you never be too low if you're talking about a 1-0 home defeat to Southampton, which is how it was looking for a long time in that game until Amad stepped up. But yeah, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, and any audio platform you choose. The Promised Land of Man United podcast. You should find us there. Subscribe, give us a review as well, leave a comment, and 5-star review. I will say I would love it if you could do that, and leave comments on the podcast as well, and subscribe on YouTube as well. The Promised Land, a Manchester United podcast. You can leave a like on the video, leave a comment as well, and I'll be reacting at some point soon in a TPL QA to some of your comments over the last few episodes and on social media. So please get in touch with me. Let me know what you'd like me to do different. Let me know what you think of the team at the moment, and I will address those at some point in the near future. But yeah, you can follow me as well on social media at _Scott Saunders on Instagram, X, and TikTok, and I'm on Blue Sky as well. Link is in the description. And let's talk about it then. I'll start with Amad, because it's been a hell of a journey for him. It really has. Think back, I think it's nearly 2021, nearly 4 years to the day that Amad joined Manchester United. He came in for big money. I think it was around £19 million with potential add-ons, which could have more or less doubled that fee. And look, I think people who'd seen him operate for Atalanta previously had seen that this is a hell of a talent that United United had done well to get a hold of. But it's not gone ultimately to plan for him until recently, has it? Because just to remind you, he spent time trying to break into the United first team. I remember a goal against AC Milan in the Europa League in a 1-0 win, like a flick header, which was one of his good early moments. But it didn't really work out for him straight away. Obviously, there's been concerns about like his adaptability to the Premier League, but the technical ability has never been in question. He's been out on loan at Rangers. That was, from what I remember, pretty underwhelming. And there was, wonders of whether he would end up breaking through until he joined Sunderland on loan. And absolutely golden season he had with them. He really showed in what is a really, really difficult league that he has all of the required quality to cut it in England. So we went to Sunderland. I think Sunderland fans who are, looking at potentially returning to the Premier League would love to have Ahmad back. They look upon that year very, very fondly, and they think this player has so much talent. It was just we've spent so long waiting for him to be allowed or for that talent to be shown on the stage at Old Trafford regularly. And I think it goes without question at the moment, this lad is United's player of the season. And a hat trick in a game where United really, really, really needed somebody to step up just shows that he's got, if I was picking any player at the moment that I think could really cut it in this overhaul that United are going to go through with from Erik ten Hag's team to Ruben Amorim's system and to Ruben Amorim's team, I think Ahmad has got all the attributes really to absolutely flourish in this team. And I'm so glad that he's starting to get his moments and he's starting to get his flowers and he's starting to look, he's 22 years old and he's taking the responsibility of having to bail United out of situations. It's crazy really to think of it. And I think I wanted to touch on the Rangers bit and the Sunderland loan as well to just show that, because we're looking at other players in this United team at the moment, like Rasmus Højlund, Garnacho, and some other players, and thinking, why aren't you delivering right now? Why aren't you delivering right now? We need you right now. And it's just a reminder, really, in an era where we've seen Pedri and Gavi and Lamine Yamal, and back in the day, Wayne Rooney in the United's case, all of these players break through and make an instant impact on the team from about 17 years old. It kind of skews the expectation levels for other players of similar ages. And it skews the expectations of what they should be able to deliver straight away. And look, I'm not saying that. I'll talk about Rasmus Højlund at some point in this episode as well, because I know that he's getting some stick at the moment for not holding the ball up well and being a little bit profligate and making the wrong decisions and not being strong enough in duels. I understand that. And ultimately, look, I will say this later in the show as well. Joshua Zirkzee came on, changed the game, and I absolutely think that guy should be starting up front at the moment because he warrants it, he deserves it, and Rasmus Højlund is not really taking his chances when he gets them. It's causing frustration. It's causing difficulty, and social media kind of explodes into this, this guy's useless, this guy's useless. And I just wanted to kind of use Ahmad's example of like him taking 4 years to get to the point where he's got to now, to the point where he's now taking on responsibility of putting United on his shoulders. It's a very, very difficult thing to do at 22 years old. And Ahmad deserves all the credit in the world for being able to step up and provide and show that quality and show that mentality and determination, even at 22. But he's had a few years to get used to it at United, and he's had a few years to kind of become ready for that. And there's other young players in this team, as I mentioned, like Garnacho and Rasmus Højlund, who are perhaps not, delivering with the consistency that everybody needs United players to show. And ultimately, United are still 12th in the Premier League. And when they're 12th in the Premier League and your centre forward and your left winger are kind of throwing in performances where they show spurts here and there of just the amount of quality that they have. But there's other moments where they make the wrong decisions or they lose out in duels. And like in Højlund's case, especially, there's a lot of focus on it because that centre forward position is so integral to getting United up the pitch. It needs a player like that, Højlund or Joshua Zirkzee, to be able to come on, hold the ball, beat a man, and offload it so United can get moving and get up the pitch. It's difficult for him at the moment, and it will take some time for him to adapt. But I just wanted to, I will circle back to Ahmad in a second, but, it's difficult to be patient at a time like this because United are 12th in the league. But there's some attackers in this team who are still very, very early 20s or 19 or whatever, and are having difficult moments. Kobbie Mainoo was taken off at half time last night as well. Was it halftime? I think it was. He was withdrawn at some point, and obviously you cannot expect players of this age to deliver at the absolute maximum every single time. And that's unfortunately the position that United are in at the moment, where players of these ages they have all of the focus on them. You know, we said with Højlund when he was signed initially that United needed a senior striker to take the burden off him from and have someone to learn from. And United didn't end up doing that. And now Højlund has been the number one choice for centre forward for a while now, and it's not always going to plan for him. So I just wanted to use the Ahmad example of it's taken him 4 years to get to this point now. And I think we look at Ahmad and we think, God, you have to play every game. You have to, because there's not many other players, if any, that we can depend on. And I think he's getting to that point of not to thrust more pressure on his shoulders, but he's getting to that point where he is the one that you look at in this team and you think, if anybody's going to do anything, it's going to be him. And it was the case again in the Southampton game yesterday. So props to him. It's so good to see that after the difficulty that he's had over the past year or so with not getting the selections under the previous manager and having to wait for his chance and not getting a run of games even after he's done something really good in a fixture. It's really good to see that now he has ascended to that status of automatic starter who has to play, ideally in that number 10 role on the right side as well. He started at right wing back on Thursday night against Southampton, but I think for me, just he looks so much better and he's so much more of a threat further up the pitch. And I think that's where he should really be playing. Obviously, Amorim has to change things around and make sure he manages his squad in the right way. Diogo Dalot was suspended for the game, and that meant Ahmad dropped back. But I think United need to get to a position where Ahmad is given that job and given that role. Not all the time, because you need to manage his minutes, but I think you see the best of Ahmad when he's playing in that role. And I would like to see it more often. But there's so many qualities that this lad has. And I just wanted to reflect on that for a second. His close control and his acceleration off the spot is... I can't really remember many United players over the last few years that I've seen and looked at and I thought, wow, like you just... The skill and the quality just blows me away at points. And he got a little bit lucky off a rebound with his first goal last night. But the finish with his weaker foot, his right foot, and maybe I'll talk about Anthony in a second. The fact that he is able and willing to take on chances with his weaker foot as well just shows what kind of a threat he is. He's very unpredictable for defenders to play against. He can go either way. He's so quick off the mark. He can get through very, very small spaces and dribble through very small spaces with lots of defenders around him and create something for himself or for somebody else. And it's such a valuable... He's full of valuable qualities. He really, really is. And it's just so nice to be able to see him now starting to deliver on a regular basis. In an ideal world, United will not be needing him to bail them out in the 82nd minute or 86th minute or 90th minute against the worst team in the Premier League that we've seen probably since Derby County. It's not ideal, really, but I think that's just where United are at the moment, and this is going to take some time in order to fully fix up. And you know, like I say, I think this is... If there's any player in this team at the moment that I think look at what this team could look like in 2, 3, 4 years' time, and I think at 22 years old, with what he's showing now, with all of the qualities that he has, I've talked about his abilities on the ball there, and I will talk more in a second about something that I really think makes him perfect for this system and Ruben Amorim. He's got all of the qualities to make you think that, right, this is a lad that we can actually depend on, that we actually know that he's got all the quality in the world to be able to hold down a place in this team as it evolves. And I don't think there's many players you can say that about in the system that Amorim wants to play. So that's kind of where I stand on him. And like Amorim said after the game, that a reminder that he's still 22, he's still very young, and we need him at the moment. But he needs to. We cannot put too much pressure on him. We cannot go and thrust all the responsibility that maybe I've just done there in a sense. I don't mean to do that, but I do need to caveat background and say this. Amad is 22 years old, but it would be wrong to expect him to deliver those kind of performances every single game. And ultimately, there's a crop of players over the last few years that have been able to do that. You think of your Mo Salahs, your Kevin De Bruyne's for a while, your Erling Haalands, and there's other players in other leagues as well. Dating back to the Ronaldo Messi era, where it was every game, it was goal, 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 goal. And the prospect or the standard for the world's top players has just been, you need to do it 60 games a season every game. And United have not really had a player like that. And I don't want to, I'm not trying to thrust that kind of pressure at all on Amad. But United they're going to need players who are going to be able to do that at some point over the next few years. And I think if there's one player that you have all the hope for in the world who can keep kicking on levels, it would be him. But just to circle back, reminder, he's 22 years old, and it would be absolutely wrong to expect that he is able to do that from this moment. So if there's a game where things don't go to plan for him, it's worth remembering just how old he is, and it's just how difficult that is to kind of bring that output out so often and so frequently. But look, if there's one player that you can hope will take on the responsibility at United, because he's done so already numerous times this season, it is Amad Diallo. So it was a great moment for him. I'm so glad that he got to be able to score a hat-trick as well, and I'll talk about that goal in a second. But the first goal I've already mentioned. The second goal, Christian Eriksen's pass was absolutely unbelievable. A little give and go with Amad and Eriksen, dinked over the top by Eriksen absolutely perfectly. And Amad just gets a toe on it. And what a moment it was, because the amount of relief in that stadium and with everybody was just, it was so noticeable, because let's be honest, that losing that game would have been incredibly embarrassing. And it's still incredibly embarrassing that United were outplayed so drastically for probably 60, 70 minutes of that game against, like I say, the bottom team in the Premier League who had 6 points in 20 games going into that game. So crazy stuff to see. But that goal was brilliant. Christian Eriksen is due a bit of credit, even if he's not really able at this point. I talk about players who are suited to the system. I think Christian Eriksen and Casemiro in particular are two players that just are not able to deal with the demands that Ruben Amorim has in a central midfielder. And maybe you know the qualities that Eriksen has, and maybe you can see it in spurts for like 10, 20-minute spells at the end of matches, like we got to see last night. He picked the lock, and fantastic pass it was. But what United are going to need is, more players to come in, hopefully with somewhere near the level of quality that Eriksen has on the ball. But we'll see how it goes. But I think what I just wanted to do before I wrap up on Amad was talk about something that I've noticed with him. I've made a video about this, and I tweeted about it as well last night. This kind of stealth press that he seems to have. And I've been thinking back, because there's a lot of moments that he's created chances for other players out of, or goals for himself, or opportunities for himself. He seems to have this. I talked about his acceleration and his speed off the ground, or off the spot. This stealth press seems to exist in him, and I think it's absolutely perfect. It's a perfect encapsulation of what Ruben Amorim wants in his players. He talks about pressing from the front, and he talks about energy and mentality and determination and having the right attitude. And I think there's one quality that Amad has, that is this stealth press, that I think we're starting to see a habit developing here. And I think back to, I'm sure you remember these moments, because they're from this season, I think. PAOK in the Europa League, where I think he scored both goals in a 2-0 win, if I remember rightly. One of the goals came about because he pressed the defender in the middle third of the pitch, maybe more towards United's goal. Pressed the defender, tackled him, took the ball off him, drove forward, and absolutely smashed in a shot from about 18 yards, 20 yards. And I thought, in that moment, that is what you need in a modern attacker, and Amad seems to have it. Then he goes on, and United beat Everton 4-0 earlier this season. There was a moment where Amad, he seems to come from around the corner or out of the defender's eye line and sneak up on them, stealth, nick the ball, and he has that acceleration then to just absolutely power away from the opponent that he's taken the ball off. And that was in the Everton game where I think he did that similar area of the pitch to the PAOK game and squared the ball for Joshua Zirkzee, and he scored, I can't remember what goal it was, but he scored a tap in because Amad squared the ball to him. And this is something that's starting to grow. This is something that is starting to become a trait in Amad's game. You think of the League Cup defeat to Tottenham last month, where United were getting smashed by Spurs, and then this comeback potential had sprung up out of nowhere. Fraser Forster was having a difficult night, but again, this stealth press seemed to come around from Amad because Forster was kind of facing the other way. He looked like he wanted to pass it out to the right side, but kind of got the ball stuck under his feet. And by the time he actually went to distribute the ball, Amad had sneaked up from kind of his peripheral and made a tackle and scored directly from the tackle. And what we saw last night, again, in the 90th minute, was Southampton passing the ball from around the box. Similar situation. Defender takes a heavy touch, but doesn't see Amad in his peripheral vision. And Amad comes in, takes the ball off the player in the penalty area and just dispossesses him and scores. And that's 4 examples that I've named. And I'm sure there's probably more about Amad and this kind of stealth press, which I think he's got, which is perfect for what Ruben Amorim wants. And you think, I talk about that moment and that third goal and everything that it meant, but I think the way that it came about just typifies what Amad is, who Amad is, the levels of determination that he has, the ability in the 90th minute, 92nd minute or whatever and the determination to go and press when the game was essentially won, really, because they'd obviously scored the 2 goals previous to that in the minutes before. To turn up and in the 92nd minute, still press and take the ball off a defender in order to score the 3rd goal. He could quite easily have not done that. Quite easily. But I think the fact that Amad is going from start to finish with that kind of intensity, that kind of desire and determination, and with the technical quality and the speed to go with it, that is what Amorim wants. I think from all his players. And if United had 11 Amads, then I think they'd be much higher in the league than 12th place. But you can't have 11. What you do need, though, is a changeover in probably a lot of personnel in this team. I think we talked about the Arsenal and Liverpool games and how United need to approach this Southampton game with the exact same attitude as they did those 2 games. And Amorim said he didn't think it was attitude last night, but it was more a physical and mental drain from the last 2 matches that United had played in. And maybe he was sticking up for his players in a sense there. But I think the thing for me was, why were United bad? And I'll talk about that just in a second. But just finally, before I go to a quick break, Amad, what a performance from him. Deserves all the flowers in the world. Absolutely fantastic. And let's hope we see more to come, because there's not many players at the moment that are delivering to Amad's level. And it's fantastic to see. So why were Manchester United bad then? Because they were really quite bad, weren't they? For 60 odd minutes, it was awful. It really, really was. And it was such Amorim had talked about how he needed to see the same United that turned up to the Arsenal Liverpool games in the weeks previous. He needed to see the same attitude and approach to the game that he'd seen, because they need to treat every game the same if they're to get good results. Because there's other teams that will look, if your energy and desire isn't there for whatever reason, or if your energy just isn't there for whatever reason, then Premier League teams have enough quality to be able to hurt you. And even Southampton managed it. I think in the reverse game, you remember early in the season where United were under Ten Hag and Southampton did pretty well in the first half and had a penalty and missed it. And then I think Matthias de Ligt scored. And that changed the fortune of the game for United. But United had problems against Southampton earlier in the season in the first half. And Southampton had approached that game with such a directness that United could not live with it at all. And Amorim, he defended his players after the game, and he said, I think the impact of the mental output and the physical output of the last two matches, and like 120 minutes against Arsenal, for example, probably had an effect on this team. And he didn't want to talk about the mentality when, Paul Scholes had on TNT punditry after the game when speaking to him. Amorim didn't think that was the case in this instance. And we know that after matches recently, he's been quite critical of why the team can't play like that in every game. But I think I agree with him, even though we did see United with the same old failings, conceding from a corner or from a set piece against a team that had not this season scored from a corner. Unbelievable. It's just so Man United of the modern day, isn't it? To see a graphic roll up on the TV screen saying, this is the only team in the Premier League this season to not have scored from a corner. 2-2-2, and then Southampton 0. Flashes up on the screen. What do you know? Next moment, the ball goes in, own goal off Man Utd, and Onana can't keep it out. It's just so United. Really, really, really United at the moment. And getting out of this habit, it was such a reminder in the first 45, 60 minutes or 70 minutes that this is going to take ages. This is going to take a while. We need to see lots of different personnel and lots of changes, because having to play the way that Amorim wants to play Thursday, Sunday in this case, or Wednesday, Saturday, or whatever it's going to be in the future, it's going to take a lot of energy and a lot of output and a lot of expenditure. And it'll be difficult. And in the end, United are going to need more than the 11 players that I think Amorim thinks he can depend on at the moment. Maybe 13, 14. I don't know how many it is, but we'll see. And even of those 11 to 14 players, they might be adapting now, but there's no reason, or there's a lot of work to do, let's just say, to make you think that in 3 years' time, they will still be part of this project. It's unfortunate, but Amorim talks about quite often how the demands of this system is unlike really anything these players were used to before, have probably been used to in previous clubs. It requires a heck of a lot of output. It requires a heck of a lot of application, and the physical drain it takes on players is going to be really difficult to contend with twice a week. And when you consider it was 120 minutes in the game against Arsenal the other day, and you see Kobbie Mainoo, Mamadou Ugarte taken off within about 50-odd minutes, it's going to require more depth. It really is. And that is how United are going to go up levels, I think. But I talk about depth, but I also look at the first team at the moment, and I think that there are positions in this team which do need permanent fixes and permanent upgrades. And United aren't really in a position to go and spend that money at the moment, which brings about the talk about selling Alejandro Garnacho to Napoli and this kind of thing, which I touched on in the last episode that I did. Go and check that out if you haven't done so already, and subscribe to the channel. But look, I think there's a lot of issues in this team at the moment. And I think really the middle four, well, the front seven, I don't know. I've got Lenny Yoro's difficult night in this as well towards the back. And I think, oh, wow. Like, how many players do you really think here are going to be able to adapt to this? I'm sure Yoro will. Like, I think there's he had a difficult night last night, but he's 18 years old, and he's gonna have nights like that. Players are just going to, and I swing back to what I said at the start of the show, thinking that at 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, that there's players in this team who can deliver to the levels that we hope and expect of them every game is going to be really difficult. You know, you look at players like, I'll make this comparison, I suppose, because Mo Salah's been one of the best players in the world for the last 6 years. He didn't really start doing it until his mid-20s. Yeah, he did it at Roma and Fiorentina in Serie A, but it was only when he went to Liverpool at the age of 24-ish, that he really started to nail it down. And at 24, it can make those couple of years can make a big difference. But yeah, I think looking at this team now, and I don't want to go too strong on this, but just in terms of the personnel, there's so many positions in this team that I think United either need more depth in or more quality in the starting basin. And Diogo Dalot and Nusaya Mazraoui have been nailing down the wing-back positions. I think they're so crucial to this team. I think they are so important to making sure that this team gets up the pitch. Having players who have that energy to be able to get up and down and be able to have the defensive quality going backwards and the attacking quality in the final third to be able to contribute in both areas of the pitch effectively for 90 odd minutes or whatever it is. Those players are hard finds, and there's a few in the Premier League that I think could be adaptable to that if United were to go get them. Milos Kerkez at Bournemouth and I think Ryan Aït-Nouri are two candidates. But look, these guys are going to cost a lot of money as well because they're coming from Premier League clubs. But the wing-back positions are so important for me. And I think what we will see when United get players who are suited to that is such a difference in the output of the team because of the positions that they take up and the urgency that they have and the energy that they have in order to cover every blade of grass on the pitch in their relevant channels, you know. So I think those positions are absolutely crucial. Amad really started there, but I touched on this earlier that I think he would be definitely better in that right 10 role. So, and getting a right wing back probably will be a little bit cheaper than having to buy a number 10 alternative to Amad. So I think those two positions, right wing back and left wing back, are absolutely crucial for me. There's a profligacy in attack, which I talked about already. And I mentioned Garnacho and Rasmus Højlund and the difficulties that they're having, you know. And look, Garnacho, he didn't have a great game last night, but what he has done in the last few games is against Liverpool, he created the goal for Amad for 2-2, provided the assist for that. He also was the player that provided the assist for Bruno in the Arsenal game as well. So he does have that quality and he's making better decisions when it matters most and providing goals and assists. But there were some moments last night he missed a good chance early on. And there were other moments where he just it didn't really click for him. But there was a moment, which is what I wanted to come to here. There was a moment where he took the ball left channel and in a kind of similar situation to what he'd done in the Liverpool game. He squared the ball across and on the end of it was Anthony, who this was the best chance of the game to this point, probably for United anyway. We've looked at Anthony over the past few years and thought, just use your right foot, mate. Just use your right foot. I think he's so incapable of using his right foot that he had to decide to slide on the ground in order to reach the ball, even though he didn't need to. All he could have done, all he needed to do was keep his run going and just put his foot in place and plant it and just meet the ball. And his right foot, it had to be his right foot. But the fact that he went in to slide and the ball ends up kind of hitting his calf or the side of his leg and bouncing back to the keeper, you think, what is it? Like, surely your right foot can't be that bad, you know? He scored goals with his right foot recently. Well, in his United career as well. So unbelievable that even happened. But, you know, Anthony coming on and it's just not. You know that United are looking for a buyer or for a loan club for him. I think that is one that United are going to have to cut their losses on, no matter the fact. I did say a few weeks ago when Amorim came in that I'd be interested in seeing Ahmad as a wing back, and it hasn't really worked out. I don't think Amorim sees him as one of those players either. So I think I will say I don't know if he'll be at the club for that long, and moments like that really aren't going to help. But I think just talking about positions here where United need to add and United need to strengthen. And I mentioned Mamadou Ugarte and Kobbie Mainoo in their central midfield positions and the alternatives in there. The fact that they've played well, and I think that is unquestionably the first choice midfield pairing at the moment. But the demands that you have in that position in this system are so vast that having that energy all the time is nigh on impossible. I think it's the fact that they weren't kind of at it energy wise last night really helped Southampton just run through the team. There were so many moments where Southampton players picked up the ball and just ran through the middle or ran on the outside. And I'll talk about Lenny Yoro in a minute. But I think what that kind of proves is, as much as I think Manuel Ugarte and Kobbie Mainoo are two players who can be good in this system and depended on, and at the moment they're unquestionably the first choice pair in that position. Having them do that for 90 minutes twice a week is difficult. And I think you notice when the drop-off comes because the structure of the team essentially just collapses on itself. So what you're going to need, and I talk about needing wing backs, and I talk about needing a striker, and I talk about needing, different options in attack. There's rotation options which United are going to need in central midfield of the same or similar quality to those two players. And it's good that Toby Collier is starting to come in and get trusted, because I feel like he has a lot of the skills and tenacity and energy that is required from a player in that position. So we'll see just how he can develop in that team. And I know people were questioning when Ugarte came off last night, why are you taking him off? But Amorim said after the game that he was finished. He was finished because of the demands of the Arsenal game a few days ago. And look, it just goes to show squad depth is so important. And we're not even at the point yet where United have an 11 that can do what Amorim wants to do. So you think of how big this job is going to be and how many players are going to need to be shifted and how many players are going to need to be brought in. It's a lot. It is a lot. And United are probably going to need to find some cheap gems as well to be able to fill in those positions and develop as more senior players hold down those roles in the team to start with. But Lenny Yoro, I've seen he did have a difficult night. I think it was Sulemana, wasn't it? That he had him on toast. And this is Southampton when they signed him in the first place. I think it was a bit of a surprise because I think he was tipped to go to like a bigger club. Kind of happens a lot where players who are playing in other leagues who have shown that they have a lot of good quality and status end up joining teams lower down the rungs in the Premier League and start to show themselves because they simply have a chance to play first team football. Lenny Yoro, I think, is viewed as probably the right centre-back in this system as it stands, and whether he transitions at some point to the middle remains to be seen. That's probably going to be a job for the next few years, I would imagine. But Yoro, he couldn't live with him. Isolated 1v1 against a quick and tricky attacker, he simply was, and he didn't really have an answer for it. And again, I'll just circle back to the point. This kid is 18 years old, and as much as he had a difficult night last night, I think Amorim will deal well with it and maybe work on what he was getting wrong and hopefully kind of keep his chin up and say, look, I believe in you, you've got this. But nights like that are going to happen, especially when you're 18 and especially when you're adapting to a new league against players who, even right down from 1st to 20th, there are players in this league who can really, really hurt teams. And I think Yoro found that out last night. But he came in for some criticism, obviously, but I think that the kid's 18 years old. Just this happens. And unfortunately, United are in a position where over the last few years, they've bought many players, and a lot of the senior ones that they've wanted to put in regular first team football have turned out to be under delivering. And they have to rely on young players in this team to take them forward. And unfortunately, you're going to get levels of performance which are up and down. And it's unfortunate, but hopefully Lenny Yoro bounces back from that and learns the lessons. And I think the thing that I noticed that was a little bit different when he came off was Matthias de Ligt went out there and just absolutely crunched his opponent like pretty early on, and it got a nice reception, like a big cheer from the Old Trafford crowd. And yeah, I thought maybe that's how you end up making your statement. And de Ligt, I think, he's got that tenacity and that he's a big boy, isn't he? And he loves crunching into a tackle as well. So it's good to see. But yeah, just lay off Lenny Yoro. If you're thinking that he might not be good enough for whatever reason, it will take time. But talking about taking time, Joshua Zirkzee, I think, changed the game again, and that's been a couple of games now in a row where after the difficult night he had in United's last home game against Newcastle, he came on and showed again what I think people want to see out of Joshua Zirkzee. I think what United need in that centre forward position is just somebody who has the strength and the technical control and the ability to hold the ball up, turn, and either carry the ball forward or lay it off to another player to continue attacks and get United up the pitch. And I think Joshua Zirkzee changed the game again, and he absolutely now, I think there was a little bit of complaint that he didn't start that game last night, but I think the fact that he's come on and changed the game again means that with the struggles that Højlund has, Zirkzee for me should get a run. He should get a chance in that position because I think the way he has bounced back from that game against Newcastle, unbelievable. Like, fantastic character that he's shown to be able to bounce back from that and making big moments and having a big impact on the game in the last two games means that I think he's deserving and warranted to start this game against Southampton, but or the next game against Brighton, which will be really difficult, by the way. You think United playing teams at home, it's been difficult enough as it is with the fact that United have a rotten home record and have been beaten by a lot of big teams at home under Erik ten Hag. So it can work against you in a sense. There's expectation from the home crowd and this kind of thing. And, some nights or some days it's difficult to contend with and do your job. But yeah, Brighton are a good football team. And it is no given here that United are getting any points at all. So I think Joshua Zirkzee has shown over the last couple of games that he is the right. He's picking up and he's doing what we need a centre forward to do in that position, just by helping United get up the pitch. And I think he's making good decisions and he's helping bring the best out of other players too. So fingers crossed and well done to Joshua Zirkzee, who changed the game again. And fingers crossed we see him in the game against Brighton. But he has to start. I think Diogo Dalot will probably come back in, I would think. I think the fact that Kobbie Mainoo and Mamadou Ugarte didn't spend like 60, 70, 80 minutes on the pitch means that hopefully they'll be a little bit more fresh to play in this game to a better level than they played against Southampton. And yeah, we'll see. Look, let me know in the comments whether how your confidence levels are in this game against Brighton, because I did go to Brighton earlier in the season and just I think they were unlucky to lose the game in the end. It was one of those nights again or afternoons where United not very good at defending set pieces, and they ended up conceding a 95th minute goal or whatever it was. Look, the Brighton they've got a pretty decent record at Old Trafford as well, so you can expect that Brighton will come into the game and apply themselves really well, offer a threat, and United need to deal with that threat a lot better than they did against Southampton. So let's see. Let me know what you think will happen in that game. If there's any players that you think have to start, let me know about Joshua Zirkzee as well, and any players that have particularly impressed you at the moment. And obviously give some love to Ahmad in the comments too. So he really deserves that at the moment, and fingers crossed he can continue it, because United need to need to continue picking up points because they went from 15th to 12th in the league last night. At least the relegation fears have been eased slightly. So fingers crossed United can continue growing and getting better. But Brighton will be really difficult. Really difficult. And I just wanted to finish the show today with a quick shout for this. If you haven't seen, I'm sure you have if you follow football news, but if you haven't seen this already, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer looks like, and he might by this point that you're listening to this show, might have already been officially appointed. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is rocking up at Besiktas as their new manager. And do you know what this means? Of course you do. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at Besiktas versus Jose Mourinho at Fenerbahce in one of the biggest derbies in Turkish football. It's already a mad enough prospect as it is just those teams facing each other. But having that added narrative of Ole versus Mourinho is just wonderful stuff. And I just wanted to say, because I know that Ole is obviously a massive club favorite, and the way that his managerial career ended up panning out at United, it didn't go to plan in the end. But I think people look back on that Ole era as some of the best months that United have had since Sir Alex Ferguson left. And I think that is unquestionable, really. And it's good to see that he's getting another chance to step back into management. You could not have picked a tastier league, really, than coming up against Jose Mourinho and Fenerbahce in Turkey. So, yeah, fantastic stuff. And I will be watching, I would imagine, when those two teams play each other, if Ole does indeed go and get the job. But, yeah, I think I'll wrap it up there. This has been the Promised Land, a Man United podcast. Please subscribe on Spotify, Apple, and all of your audio platforms. I'm available everywhere, also on YouTube as well. The Promised Land, a Manchester United podcast. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment as well. And yeah, get in touch with me on social media at @_ Scott Saunders on X, TikTok, Instagram, and I'm on Blue Sky as well. The link is in the description. And I'll see you shortly. I'll see you soon with, look, there's a TPL QA coming up. There's another game against Brighton coming up as well at the weekend. And the games are back coming thick and fast for United. And obviously it's a January transfer window as well. So there could be some developments in that sense, but we will see exactly what happens. And just final thought, at least they didn't lose, right? 3-1 over Southampton. Well done to Ahmad. And look, everyone, I'll see you soon. Thanks so much for listening and for watching. I've been Scott from the Promised Land podcast.